May 21st, 2002.
We have seen the impact of tragedy on our community.
The shootings shocked the entire city.
It galvanized people. People who had been afraid, I think, said to themselves, now is the time for me to stand up and let people know who I am.
When the series ran, I gather the reaction was fairly tempestuous.
Vitriolic would be a good word for
Vitriolic.
Thank you for calling the Roanoke Times. Can I help you?
It was promoting a lifestyle that we don't believe in and one that we don't condone.
Is homosexuality something that people choose, or is it the way they are born?
I think what the church, my church, is struggling with is the possibility that we might be dealing with something more than just sin.
Tonight, a matter of choice. Gays, straights, and the search for common ground.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Roanoke, Virginia, Ted Koppel.
It didn't get much national attention, but it was a pretty vicious hate crime. One of the worst in American history.
He told him that he was looking for a gay bar because he wanted to blow away some faggots.
Anna Sparks was a regular at the Backstreet Cafe, which is a gay bar. Ellen Blankenship is the manager.
I thought at first someone was popping balloons or something, and between the first and the second shot, it hit me that there were no balloons in here.
I heard another pop, and I seen somebody falling down, and I heard somebody yell, "Get down."
It seems like everybody was hitting the floor and knocking tables and bottles over.
He came up to me with the gun and pointed it right straight at me, and he just looked at me, and it was, "You're next, and you're mine." And the gun wouldn't fire, and he just lowered his arm and walked on out.
About 12:30, I heard a lot of sirens. It just kept going, and I thought something's really wrong.
They were screaming, moaning and screaming.
The shooter had killed one person and wounded 6 others. A drifter from out of town, he told police he had been teased all his life because of his name, Ronald Gay. Inadvertently, perhaps, Ronald Gay forced the community of Roanoke to come face to face with certain parts of itself it might previously have ignored. Mary Turner, stay-at-home mom, lesbian.
Virginia's still in the South, and people are always polite, whether they agree with you or disagree with you.
Will Trinkle, Roanoke businessman, openly gay.
The tragedy that happened at Backstreet really woke a lot of people in this community up, and by community I mean straight and gay. I think I was amazingly proud of how the city reacted to it, because it could have gone either way.
This week, we have seen the impact of tragedy on our community.
Some out-of-town gay activists helped organize a candlelight vigil. It could easily have turned into an indictment of Roanoke as a breeding ground for hate crimes, but local gays and lesbians said, no, that wouldn't be fair. That's not the way the city is. The mayor, a devout Southern Baptist who personally regards homosexuality as a sin, debated whether he should appear at the vigil, then concluded that as the mayor of all the citizens of Roanoke, he should, and he did.
Anyone who would further threaten the peace and the security of the citizens of the Roanoke Valley, I say, no more, not again, not on my watch.
Mind you, it wasn't all that way. There were some ugly reactions, too.
My whole life, he was the only father that I had.
Misty Overstreet talking about her Uncle Danny, who was shot and killed at the Backstreet Cafe.
He was a very kind person. He was a very lively person, and everyone that knew him liked him.
Misty was a 17-year-old high school senior at the time of the murder. She is not gay.
The Monday after the shooting, I went to school. And I walked into a class, and I had 3 people come up to me and say that they were sorry. And then I had a student come up to me and he said, "So, I saw you on the news and you had something to do with those faggots." And I thought about it, and I said, A human being died, and the only thing that they can say was he was a faggot.
The local paper, the Roanoke Times, had been working on a major series about homosexuality before the shooting. They'd been having a hard time getting gays and lesbians to talk. Mary Bishop's a reporter at the Times.
It galvanized people. People who had been afraid, I think, said to themselves, now is the time for me to stand up and let people know who I am.
You can run and hide, or you can stand up and say no. And this community stood up and said no.
They did it by talking to the paper for a series that ran over 4 days. Front page, inside page, cover of the feature section, on and on and on. Rich Martin is the managing editor of the Roanoke Times.
If you didn't want to read about it on the front page of the paper, you couldn't go to the features section and not read about it because it was there too. So it was big, and you couldn't miss it in the paper. So.
For a community that had largely kept its opinions on homosexuality to itself, a community that was reeling from the shock of the Backstreet shootings, the series was like lancing a boil. The subject of gays and lesbians in Roanoke, though, was all but unavoidable. It certainly couldn't be tucked back into the closet again. That part of the story when we come back.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by America's Pharmaceutical Companies.
You might think the newspaper's gay series would hinge on the tragic events of the Backstreet shootings. In fact, it was quite the opposite.
What struck us was actually how normal, in a sense, their lives are.
Editor-in-Chief Mike Riley.
They're in a bowling league, they play softball, they run businesses, they don't get enough sleep some nights, they have families they're trying to bring together. They were sort of the same problems that would speak to you or to me. And that's an important story to tell because that really goes beyond what we think of gays and lesbians, shatters the stereotypes.
And shatter it did. The newspaper's Living Gay series ran over 4 days, beginning under the subhead, Roanoke is a Mecca for gays and lesbians. The stories introduced many Roanokers to lives in their community about which they knew nothing. Like the Fellowship Bowling League.
It's a chance for us to get together as a group, as a gay group, and be able to come out and have some fun without worrying about being judged or condemned.
Like these gay fathers, Mark Martin and Michael Sitton, raising a teenage daughter. And the struggle of this lonely teenager, Lisa Sanino.
I saw no gay people or no different people at my school. I felt like I was the only one.
There was also a story on the Metropolitan Community Church, a Protestant denomination that ministers primarily to gay men and lesbians. Pastor Catherine Houchins.
It began with 12 people who met and wanted to have a place of worship where they could be all that they were, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, and Christian.
And a profile of a lesbian couple who attend Houchins Church, Jen DeSager and Wendy Maxey.
I was always raised you can't be gay and have God in your life, and so now that I know that it's not an oxymoron, and it's pretty much been a big transformation for both of us, like the last year and a half.
We need to come together and sort of show people that, yeah, we do have God in our lives and we can grow. And that's the only way to prove it to the people who believe that we can't, is to like let it show in our lives that God does work in our lives as well. You know, and that's the only way that you'll get through that wall, I think.
It was a series designed to tell the stories of Roanoke's lesbians and gay men, mostly casting them in a positive light. But the paper also profiled John Ledoux.
But I have never in my life hated anybody. I've never been homophobic.
His profile told of the Ledoux family estrangement over son Duffy's homosexuality. But Ledoux was so unhappy with the series, he wrote an editorial complaining that it glorified the homosexual lifestyle and ignored important health issues. Ledoux is retired from his service as a Navy officer and from his post as an engineering professor at Virginia Tech.
The Bible says that men having sex with men will reap the benefits in their own bodies. You know, and that was written 2,000 years before we knew anything about AIDS.
But it was this image, two young men kissing, that particularly riled some readers.
I was a little surprised that Roanoke, as conservative as this area is, would do an article that was that open.
We've certainly written about other hot-button issues, abortion, capital punishment, things like that are very important to people. But this seemed to be an even hotter button issue than anything else combined.
It was promoting a lifestyle that we don't believe in and one that we don't condone, so that was the reason why we canceled it.
One of about 500 cancellations the paper received.
Thank you for calling the Roanoke Times. Can I help you?
Letters, emails, and voicemail poured in. Reporter Mary Bishop was inundated.
I don't care what anybody says, homosexuality is wrong. It's wrong.
The majority of the responses were negative. Some were outright violent.
I want to call and share my regards about the fags that got shot in the bar. I'm tired about reading about it in the paper. The man's dead. There's 5 or 6 that were injured. Too bad they weren't shot and killed.
Mr. Mayor, what was unsettling then about the series?
Well, I think attempting to paint us as a San Francisco-like city, that our own newspaper did that. We are peace-loving. We pass on the street. We don't pay attention to who does what, and whatever their outlandish ideas that maybe happens by our standards in Roanoke that we read and hear of in cities like San Francisco, they don't happen here in Roanoke.
But Roanokeers did pay attention to the gay series. In fact, many readers revolted.
They were not completely balanced, and they kind of favored or extolled the homosexual lifestyle. I think that's why the reaction was so great.
I felt the paper was saying this is positive, this is good, this is very acceptable in our community, and I as a parent was teaching my children the opposite of that.
For many of them it was sinful, for many of them it was a taboo, for many of them it was something they were just profoundly uncomfortable with. It was as if we had dug deep down the surface of this community and touched a nerve that ran through everyone and just irritated the hell out of everybody.
Roanoke is a city encircled by the beauty of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Roanoke is historically a blue-collar town. It grew up around the railroad. It's a place where families feel comfortable raising their children.
People can come here, they can feel safe, they can be out to the degree they want to be out, where they couldn't in smaller towns of 1,000 people or 5,000 people. It's progressive in many ways and conservative in ways.
Conservative? Definitely. Bible-Belt country? It seems as though there's a church on every corner. And when it comes to homosexuality, most world religions specifically condemn it. We sat down with a group of local religious leaders at the Raleigh Court Methodist Church in Roanoke. There was a series in the Roanoke newspaper on homosexuality. I would just like you to give me a sense of how your community reacted to that series. Southern Baptist.
The people that I came in contact with were very disappointed with the series. Many people felt like that the newspaper was trying to promote that as a lifestyle and elevate that.
Roman Catholic.
I think the newspaper reported some of the things that were going on, certainly. This is what's happening, more or less. I don't know that they were trying to promote any particular lifestyle.
Muslim.
But we was kind of surprised at the number of people that they say was in this valley. I think they said something about 10,000 people. And that's a lot of homosexuals in the valley.
Methodist.
Some thought it was helpful to have information about that community, the gay community. Others felt that it was promoting a lifestyle. There was no consensus in my congregation. What was relevant was that no one wanted to talk about it.
Their church's views of homosexuality shape their pastoral responses to it.
People don't choose to be homosexual, but they do choose to engage in that activity, sexual activity, and that would not be acceptable to the church.
This is an evil, and we cannot tolerate it, and we should move against it, and we should try to do everything not to spread it in the society, and don't let nobody think that this is okay, that this is an acceptable lifestyle.
There is a prohibition against the ordination of homosexuals. We have a prohibition against performing same-sex unions or marriages. But other than that, we recognize that this is something that we have to be open to in terms of offering our love and compassion to people of all persuasions, regardless of their sexual orientation.
Membership in our church is predicated on a person knowing Christ and receiving Him as Savior and Lord. And we think that that would be incompatible with the person that would want to participate in a sinful lifestyle, whether it be homosexuality, adultery, or whatever.
You and I know full well that, including all of us,
yeah,
we're all sinners.
Absolutely.
Right? And
Absolutely.
Continue to be, and even a man as good as yourself, I'm sure has some sins.
Okay.
And that's not incompatible with being a Southern Baptist. You just have to keep trying. Isn't that the name of the game?
Keep walking with Christ. Yeah, stay with Christ, and let Him work on you. We believe that man is incapable of changing himself apart from the power of God in someone's life.
Father, we would accept people of all orientations in whatever situations they happen to be in, because everyone sitting out in the pew, including myself, as the pastor said before, are sinners. And so if we started excluding sinners from the congregation, we'd soon be out of business, I suppose.
So is there anything different when we talk about a homosexual than if we were talking about a plain old garden variety adulterer?
Both are sin. Sin is sin.
So there's no difference.
There's no difference. There's no difference regarding sin, but I think there is a difference in why this has become such a big issue. For our church, the United Methodist, it's become one of the most divisive things. It's dealing with a fundamental understanding of our relationship to God. It's the bedrock of who we are as human beings, and for generations, the teachings were such that this didn't even come up as an issue. For whatever reason, in modern times, it has become an issue as we are looking, how do we reach out with compassion to a group of people who are living a lifestyle that many find very uncomfortable.
And yet, Pastor, we don't draw that distinction for the adulterers among us, for the liars among us, for the thieves among us, for the murderers among us, for the rapists among us. We don't separate them out, do we, as a category?
No, and I think what the church, my church, is struggling with is the possibility that we might be dealing with something more than just sin. There may be an indication based on studies that we're going to have to come to terms with the makeup of people and how they are put together, and some may be put together a little bit different.
Pastor Michael?
Well, I do not think that it's been scientifically proven that it's that everybody that is participating in that lifestyle is genetically predisposed to that.
Okay, you think it's a matter of choice?
I think, by and large, yes, it is a matter of choice.
Why? I mean, let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're right, that there is nothing genetic about it. Okay, it's a matter of choice. Can you explain to me why anybody would choose to live the kind of lifestyle that subjects them to ridicule, scorn, hatred, being excluded from almost every other part of society? Why would anybody choose that?
Why would anybody choose any sin? Why would anybody choose any sin? It's just the very nature of man.
I feel like I want to throw a rope to my brother pastor.
Throw a rope, okay.
We've had this issue come up in our church for the past 30 years, that there is illogical. We should correct this. We should permit these unions. We should acknowledge that homosexuality is simply a different expression of humanity and move on. There are others who are equally adamant that say, no, we're the ones who still consider this an abomination. We can't tolerate this. We won't go there. And the two sides clash.
To receive a daily email about each evening's Nightline and a preview of special broadcasts, log on to the Nightline page at abcnews.com.
Tomorrow, we'll look at a couple of families in Roanoke, one headed by two lesbians, the other headed by a man and a woman with deep religious convictions about an abomination.
We love gay people. We have two of them in our family that we love dearly, but it does not negate the fact that we think what they're doing is morally repugnant.
Just talk about what life is like. I think people initially expect it to be so different for two women living together. Small child?
I think it is so normal, it's boring. Because I was thinking about that the other day as we had an argument about changing room arrangements and furniture. You know, that's what everybody goes through. It's just pretty much routine.
That tomorrow, as a matter of choice, continues. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.